You're talking about the Trumas Hadeshin. How do they go about doing it? Yeah, there's a lot of things here. The Kohen has to wear good clothes for lesser clothes for Tumas Hadeshin. We also saw that Tapuach and Tafuach, machlokas of how the Mizbeach was actually constructed. Okay? And we saw this halacha about how this isn't exactly clear because did the Rambam have our Mishnah? He says here that when they do it in Yom Kippur, mechatzos alayla. And I mentioned that apparently the Mishnah says something different. We actually saw what the Mishnah says. Now here's the technical how they do Trumas Hadeshin. Now, we also mentioned that this is says Haramas Hadeshin, and in Chazal it's Trumas Hadeshin. The Shoresh Reish Vav Mem became the Shoresh Tuf Reish Mem. Today, some guys were asking about that. What's the Shoresh of Vaychal Moshe Pnei Hashem Elokav? Moses beseeched God. So there's some problematic ones. Say, well, it has to do with making ill or weak because the Chalot from this week's parsha, Asher Chila Hashem Ba. Hashem somehow made the land sick with the punishments. He turned it into Sodom and Gomorrah. That was also going to be in this week's Torah reading on Shabbos. So it seems to be the same verb there, but you can't make God ill or weaker. So it must be something else. There's a lot of shorishes that use a chet lamed. There's chet lamed lamed, chet lamed hey, or silent hey, yud chet lamed, and mem chet lamed. And those who know the diktuk and the shorashim point out, yes, indeed, from a technical aspect, those are a bunch of different three-letter roots in Hebrew, but they all have a chet lamed in the middle, so they're all related somehow. We'll talk about that next time. Okay, so someone's here. Okay, let's get back to this. Ketzad Tormi, how did they do it? Misha Zachal Litrom, Tovel Levesh Big Day Harama. The Kohen who won the lottery, okay? It's his privilege that day to take out the ashes from the altar. So he dunks in the mikvah, and then he puts on his Big Day Harama. We pointed out, from like the Kohen Gadol, anytime a Kohen puts on a Kohen outfit, beforehand, he has to immerse himself in the mikvah. And it doesn't have to do with Tuman Tahor. He was already Tahor. He's working in the base of Mikdash. And yesterday was Tahor. Nothing happened to him since yesterday that would ordinarily require him to re-immerse himself in the mikvah. But the fact is, he's taking off his pajamas. The Kohanim slept in regular clothes at their dormitory. And when it comes time to do the service, he has to put on the official Kohen clothes. But he puts on lesser clothes. Big Day Harama, because this apparently is it's dirt. Dealing with all this ash is apparently much more likely to get him soiled than, let's say, dealing with sprinkling blood. Okay? After he puts on his clothes, he washes his hands and feet. Normally, it would be rechitza or natila. Okay? When we wash our hands in a ritual manner, that's called natila. Why is it called natila? Because you have to pick up a coast. That's called a natla. Okay? It has to do with handling. You have to handle the water and it has to be poured through a person's own strength, or technically a monkey, as long as there's someone who knows how to pour. And in this case, though, he washes his hands from the kior. When a Kohen washes his hands and feet, the special verb is kiddush. Even though, by the way, in the Torah, what's the verb used? Yeah, basically the kior had taps. Okay, well, it's called the beres now. That's what, or in the Mishneh Hebrew, it's called the dad. Now, his washing of the hands ritually in the Torah is called rechitza, literally washing. Not shtifa, not natila, it's just washing. But here, Chazal said the kadesh yadav raglav. V'omrim lo yizaher shema tiga bakli. They tell him also, make sure don't touch the vessel with which you're going to be doing this. Ad shetikadesh yadecha v'raglecha, until you actually, wash your hands and do this. Why it says from the kior kafisha osek kol kohen amatchil lavod. This is what they always do, by the way. So kevan shazo avodah rishana bayom hachwen adayin lo kidesh yadav raglav. Okay, this is the first thing he did. So, this is the first thing. Make sure, wash your hands and feet first. Kohanim were, of course, barefoot. They didn't wear socks. Imagine if it was January in the temple. Okay, you're doing this before sunrise on a cold morning. Okay, so like the Rambam says, Kohanim actually had it difficult sometimes. There was an official Kohen doctor who would take care of them because they were exposing themselves to the elements all the time. Okay. And then he takes this fire pan, basically a shovel, Vishal kesefayatho, it was made out of silver. V'yaythan nituna b'miktzua bein kevesh lamizbeach, v'maravo shel kevesh. Okay, not a keves. This is a kevesh. That means the ramp. It was over here at the corner between where the ramp meets the altar, because the ramp was not as wide as the altar was at its base or at its top. Right? You look at pictures. The base of the altar was 32 by 32, but the ramp was considerably less wide than that. So on the south side where the ramp was, you could see there's a part where, if we had a picture over here, we have a picture here. You could see there was oh, look over here. See, he's pointing out that corner over there. There's a corner here. That's basically where they kept it. Okay, so it was waiting there. Veshel kesef I thought, okay, and v'notel makta. But it's on this hidden corner over here on the west side, southwest over there. Okay, this way is south. The ramp is on the south, so it's on the west side of the ramp, that corner. Okay, the west is on top. Okay. He takes this shovel and he goes to the top of the altar. He pushes aside the coals this way and that, right and left. He tries to dig out some of the coals that have been fully consumed in the heart of the fire. And he goes back down to the ground level. There's no eretz there. It's actually the temple is, of course, paved with stones, and it was actually a din. If a stone became even loose, it was considered puzzle. You couldn't stand on there until you actually brought some cement and got it back into place. So what's different about the coals you'll find inside the fire? The leva eish. It's usually hotter there, right? More consumed. So these are the ones that are well consumed. More on top, you make a Boy Scout type fire. What? Okay, but you find something that's the most consumed there. Yes, it will turn to dust. It's basically deshen, ash. Well, it has a sandy consistency, but it's a different color, of course. Yeah. He turns northwards. North is to the right side on our picture. Hold on one second. Make sure I'm in the case, same place. He walks on the ground, not literally eretz once again. In the Mishkan, it was like this. He was actually walking on the dirt because the portable tabernacle didn't have paved stone floor. They just set it up where they were. Malach ba'aretz lamizrach kevesh kamo eser amoth klapei tzafon. And he starts walking which way? He walks to the east side of the ramp, about 10 amos towards the north, right? Then he piles those coals that he had taken out of the fire right on the floor. Okay. And actually I have put a picture here, right about there. Okay. He just puts it on the floor there. That's just to take off a certain amount, a token amount of ashes. By the way, there's a ton of ashes on the altar. He takes out one shovelful and he just puts it there on the ground. Okay. Let's see why. Okay. He puts it just about 3 tfachim, which is about 24 centimeters from the ramp. That's also where they put the gizzards of the bird korbanos. Okay. They basically, when they make a korban out of the bird, they take out its digestive tract. Well, yeah, pigeon or turtle dove, what do, they split it a certain way. Sometimes they split it completely, rip it open. Sometimes they just cut it open to take out the gizzard. Okay. You ever see what a bird's digestive tract looks like? Inside a pigeon, inside their heads, there's not much brains. They're very small-headed, right? And also the kishkas, most of the kishkas taken up by the food pipe that goes down there. They have very small lungs, by the way. Not particularly large like, say cattle do. And, the one-way digestive tract. There's the pouches in there where they have like rocks, actually, like their digestion is very, very strange. No, it's certainly not like a ruminant stomach. And someone was asking, wait a minute, they actually saw one of these birds, they're quite light. Why is it that all of Maseches Beitza is talking about taking these birds and eating them on Yontif? People used to slaughter pigeons and doves. They had dovecotes and, bird houses. They'd eat these things on Yontif. It's basically a single serving. I said it's similar to those fish they sell in the makolets. They sell tilapia. It's basically half a tilapia with the skin on it. individually wrapped. So that's what it was like eating one of these birds. Okay, so that's where they put these birds. They wouldn't get burned on the mizbeach. These digestive tracts of them. Okay, and also they take some. There's this idea of the feathers of the birds, right? Shisha otobich nafav lo yavdil. Okay, let's go on with this. Where are we? I lost it over here. Okay. V'dishuna mizbeach hapnimi v'nos. Hold on. Yeah. And what else did they put at this spot on the altar, on the floor of the temple? That's where they put everything they took out of the inner altar and the menorah. Menorah, they take out the burnt wicks. Every day they replace the wicks, right? Those wicks are now charcoal. So they put them there. They're deposited there. And also all the ashes from the inner altar. What are the ashes from the inner altar? They take coals from this outer altar. They put it on top of the golden altar in the temple, and they pour some incense powder on it, right? That's how they did the incense. Eventually, all the incense is burned and the coals are burned out. So they have to remove that every single day, right? So you're going to ask, wait a minute, every day in the temple, they're taking out a certain amount of ashes from the menorah and both altars and depositing it on the floor on this particular spot. Well, it's already burned out, basically. And the gizzards have been there all night, by the way. So wait a minute. Eventually, this pile will start getting big. It'll start taking up space, right? Let's continue. We're going to get to this. This digging that he does with the shovel. That's basically the mitzvah. Go up there with the shovel, the silver shovel, take a token amount of coals and ashes from it, and deposit it there. The question is, wait a minute, what's going to happen here? Okay. Rashi, who was a little bit more, I guess, fantastic than the Rambam, says in Yoma, they point out over here, says that the gechalim, that which the Kohen there was basically absorbed into the ground. A miracle happened there. According to Rabbi Tam, they would clear it every single day. No, like his job was to put it there, but then they would actually, physically clean it. Okay, and that's apparently what the Rambam held. It's the mitzvah is to ceremoniously put all these things once they're done. But eventually, there was another Kohen's job was to bring, I wouldn't say the garbage can, but some other thing. The wheelbarrow and the broom and the dustpan and sweep it up and move it. By the way, the blood that they applied to the altar every single day, a sin offering and other sacrifices. Each one had their own. Some we said you apply the blood with the finger. Some you splash the blood on the corner. Some you just pour the blood at the base. Right? Some apply the blood of certain birds was squeezed out on the wall of the altar, right? The altar had lots of blood spots in different places. It got very bloody. But the altar was supposed to be kept, at least in the second temple, was white. They would plaster it all the time, whitewash it. So what would they do with all the blood? The answer is they would regularly clean off the blood. That was something they did. This is similar to what they say with the blood that the Kohen Gadol sprinkles on the paroches. The paroches of the temple, the inner paroches, was a curtain, a gigantic curtain, 40 amos tall, that spanned from the ceiling of the Kodesh until the floor, divided between the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kodeshim. And it was made out of very fancy woven fabric, right? Multicolored wool and linen. Since they did that at the paroches in the Mishkan, they continued. They always replaced the paroches, just like you have a paroches for an aron. Eventually, it gets worn out, so they replace it. Now we make it out of velvet. They didn't have velvet back then. So the Kohen Gadol is sprinkling blood on the paroches. That's going to stain the paroches. Eventually, they replaced it. They had a way of the signs. They cleaned the paroches. They take it to the mikvah, right? They don't get how many quantity to take to immerse in the mikvah. If they had a mikvah that large, okay. But there was times when things got bloody, and then they had to clean them. Now, it was assumed that once a Kohen had bloodied his or soiled his Kohen outfit, so that was it. They didn't wash that. They just replaced it. Wear new white linen uniform. So too in these cases, just like they would regularly re-whiten and clean off the altar once they'd applied the blood, so that it doesn't look bloody at the beginning of whatever the service of the holiday or the individual day, whenever they felt that it was proper to clean the altar. So too, yes, they had this mitzvah to deposit these ashes and the rest of this in right next to the altar in the temple, but it doesn't mean they just left it there. They eventually clean it up. Okay, so yeah, we see that. And as a matter of fact, they have to say that eventually it would get cleaned up because they also said that there was times when they flooded the temple, like Erev Pesach. What they do? There was always this channel of water. The tap was on, and there was water flowing through what's called the Amah right down the middle of the temple courtyard. You wouldn't even notice it. What? No, the water was actually there. Like they had, they used their. This is we consider this nowadays. We have much more sophisticated plumbing, but yeah, okay, yeah, we discussed that like a few months ago. Yeah, it's a mushel for something, but there was also literally water flowing through the temple courtyard, just a little trickle. But if you stop up where it's supposed to be exiting, you stop up the drain, eventually starts filling the corridor. That's they cleaned it out. That's basically how they did, mop the floor, just like wet everything. So obviously, when they did that, this would also remove all the ashes there. Not every Rishon says like Rashi that it was just absorbed in its place. Okay, no, but it would be washed away. Once this fellow who did the formal Truma Sadesh and did this, he came off the temple, he came off the altar. All the other Kohanim start, okay, also they wash their hands and feet quickly, everybody. They take the other magrefas, those are, these, I guess, rakes, for lack of a better word, and the tzinorot. Tzinorot are these skewers, okay? These skewers because they're, or pitchforks. They're going to go up to the altar now and make Seder up there. Okay. Go to the top of the altar. Notice it says here, all the other Kohanim, this wasn't done in a manner like we see the rest of the temple service where they actually divide it up and they have the 21st finger count. You do this job, you do that job. This is everybody, every man for himself. Whoever wants to can join in on this early morning service. They go up to the altar. All the limbs, okay, from the burnt offerings and the entrails of the korbanos, every oloth. Why? Well, I'd say every of the oloth. It means if you had a burnt offering, so all of its major parts, like they cut the ola into large sections of, let's say, the bull or the sheep as it was, and those are burnt. But if it's any other korban, those were consumed by people. The meat was mostly eaten by the Kohanim, regular people, and the only piece of the korban that made it up onto the altar was the entrails, the forbidden fats, right? So that's what he's talking about. All these other pieces that maybe didn't finish burning all night, because there's there's a backlog there. So there's actual pieces of korbanos from the previous day, which are recognizable. You can still see that this is an animal's leg. This is still like the kishkas from this shlamim or whatever it may be. Okay, they weren't consumed in the fire all night. Machzirino tam mizbeach. They moved them to the side of the altar, around the edges. Ve'im enat stadim machzikin. If there's no room, so rimo tam kevesh keneged asovev. They also put some on the ramp opposite the sovev. Okay, the sovev is this other ramp over here. Yeah, they put it over here. The sovev is basically the altar was tapered, right? It's widest at its base, and as it gets higher and higher, it gets less wide. Okay, so that the sovev was like the halfway point on the height. So they basically put them on the ramp, okay, about the same height as the sovev, like halfway up the ramp. What are they going to do there? Well, they'll take care of them soon. Next. You can ask the question, why did these pieces of the korbanos not get fully consumed in the fire? Let's say the fire is going on, a large fire, right? But you find on top of the fire, there's still pieces of korbanos that are not burnt. What we could attribute this? Well, I'll ask you something that you saw. They were burning the chametz the other day. They made a big pile next to the park, right? So there's still at 3:00 in the afternoon where they burnt the chametz. What do you notice on the top of that pile? What's on top of the pile? What? You still probably see a whole challah is still there, or a bunch of pitas are still there. Why didn't they get consumed? They've been sitting on this fire for 6 hours. They didn't stoke the coals, or there was not enough other material in the fire to actually keep going. They didn't put enough firewood there, right? So maybe the chametz is dry enough; it'll start, burn on its own. But if you put just too much chametz on top of the fire, it's not going to burn. So here's what's happening: that you add a certain amount of wood to burn these korbanos. There's only a certain amount of korbanos it could burn, because the wood, in order to burn meat, it has to first dehydrate the meat. It's a 70% water, right? and also the entrails. They're very liquidy there. So just put them on the fire. If these things are left over overnight, it's because there was enough wood. The wood is already burned out. So that's what they're doing. They're taking off the pieces that didn't burn well overnight and taking away the ashes from the fire that had been there in order to burn them. And that's what the Rambam is describing here. Okay. So here it says here, over there. So you take down all this ash, okay, and then they scrape it around, okay, all the sides of the mizbeach. Okay, with these pitchforks and these scrapers, they're basically pushing all the ash, all the fully burnt stuff, onto the tapuach, which, like the Rambam says, is just a big pile of ash in the middle. Okay, it's not on fire anymore. And then they take from that pile with the psach ter. So they show you a picture over here. This basically, it didn't have to be the shape. It's just a containment vessel. It's a big vessel that holds as much as a letech. I have it over here that it's 125 liters or so. It's quite big, right? For reference, they have a picture of there also. It shows how big it is. Your garbage pail in your kitchen, if you have a large kitchen-sized garbage pail, American style, that's 50 liters. Okay, they say it's about 125. Makbili says it's only 108. It's still twice as big as your home garbage pail, just as a reference. Okay, wish I didn't use it, but that's the reference. And what they do, moridino to lamatos. So they gather up as much of the ashes like this. This is a large quantity. This is the real removal of the ash. And by the way, why is such a thing necessary on a regular basis? Because there's only so much room on top of the altar. So yes, you want the tapuach to be there. On holidays, they kept a larger tapuach, as we saw, right? And it's actually a good thing to show there's a lot of korbanos, but eventually you got to clean it out. Okay? You can't just have every single korban that ever was burnt remain on the altar. And they take that down. So you see, basically they're cleaning off the ashes from the altar. There's the formal first spoonful of ash, the first shovelful, that's the Terumas Hadeshen. But then the Kohanim are busy also clearing off the rest of the ash. Yes, so there's the idea that once it's all used up, once it's done with its mitzvah, so it's done. They have a place. They had a place where they disposed of it. We'll read about it. Uvar galim lo ayu mordinoto. On holidays, they didn't take it down. They used to let the pile keep getting bigger and bigger. That's the tapuach of the holidays. They kept this pile, right, very tall in the middle of the altar. It looked nice. And they bring other deos over here that, according to the Rambam in the Parish of Mishnayos, that they would actually clear out all this ash every day except for the holidays, right? And according to the Ravid, no, sorry, that's according to the Ravid also. But Rashi says, and the Tosfos say, that they'd only actually clear out the tapuach when what? When they really had a need to. Okay? It actually got too full. But the Rambam seems to say that the same they do every single day, clear out the ashes, and you make the tapuach, but you clear it out except on holidays when you keep it bigger. Okay, very, very interesting idea there. I wonder what's going to be like in a future temple. How much korbanos are we going to be bringing? Yeah, yes, I know. People who know barbecuing know this. So you have to replace the coals. So there's an idea that in order to burn the korbanos, you have to have a certain amount of wood. And there's a way to calculate it. But sometimes there's only, there's so many korbanos and all that. There's only so much place. So this was an ordinary thing that you see that there was many pieces of the korbanos that were not burned. Okay. And by the way, that's what the night shift of the Kohanim was supposed to be, hekter chalavim, right? They have the night shift was burning all the extra pieces of korbanos that they didn't have a chance to burn during the course of the day. Any kohen who wanted to, he could take some of this ashes that they took down from the altar in the letech, in this psach ter, and he takes it out of the city to, here's what we're discussing, the shefech hadeshen. Shefech hadeshen literally means the ash dump. It means where they spill out the ash. By the way, someplace a dump in certain English dialects is called a tip. Why is it called a tip? Because the dump truck tips it over. You spill it out. So there was a place, a designated place outside the city, I think in the Kidron Valley, where they would basically take out all the ash from the temple. Of course, it has to be done. We don't dump it like a dump truck, but it's a big, I guess it would be a bronze vessel. They didn't make it out of gold. It'd be make it way too heavy. It wasn't silver, but it's a bronze. Most of the things were bronze, and they'd fill it up 100 liters or so of ashes, and deposit them outside at the Shevach Hadeshen. But really, so a lot of Kohanim need to do this. There's no lottery. Count the 21st finger. There's no official distribution of this among the Kohanim. Whoever wants to can take part in removing the ashes. You never had Kohanim who were lazy and saying, no, I don't want to do that. That's not so much fun. Remember, they want the privilege of doing the korbanos, right? They want the privilege of getting a chance to bring the Torahs, something else, right? But they never lacked Kohanim who can remove the ashes from the temple, even though what it involved, actually leaving the temple, even leaving town. Okay. Technically, it's not even an avoda. Once it's off the mizbeach and it's on the floor of the azara in the psach, this isn't a kohanic service. But they wouldn't even let Bali Mumin do it, even they blemish. It's not the same thing as a mum, by the way. Sometimes they would let him do that because it's not considered like a mum like the rest of them. The problem with the guy we saw with the left hand is that he's just not doing the avoda the right way. Okay, but he's not necessarily a Baal Mum. Where I mentioned this before. Sheikrivu korbanot rabim hera milim noi nechtevet minukedet al yidei Rambam beferish mishnayos no-e. See here, what do you have in your editions? In Korain, it's spelled nun vav yud, noi. What do you have there? Well, and here, the Machon Mamri follow what you have in Perish Mishnayos no-e. Okay. And as we said it before, that's an Aramaism thing. Well, no, he says here, Makbili has it spelled no-e, but pronounced no. It's a silent aleph. Okay, so there are different ways of saying it. This is similar in Aramaic. We said kol tag belohi olai. Is it ohi? Is the suffix in Aramaic ohi or oi? Okay, we saw that it depends on your era and where you were, how that happens in Aramaic. Next, over here. The place where they actually deposit all the ashes is what? Not a place where there were strong winds. You don't want to be dispersed right away. Velo as ramim gorfimoto. Not only that, there's no streams in case it's not the type of place where it rains. You suddenly see that there's a lot of water flowing there, right? There's certain places you take a look around, at least in natural landscapes, water tends to go places. And you heard about this also when they built the Modi'in Elite, what's called Kiryat Sefer. They made a major problem. They built a major thoroughfare there that happens to follow and actually exacerbate the natural water flow when it rains down the hill. So that basically this street turns into a river when it flows. Okay, a very rushing river, just like that side of the way they paved the street over there. Remember when it used to rain? So it's like full of water. Like that shouldn't be. They should have had ways that the water drains somewhere before that. They should put a storm drainer or two so that the street doesn't become so full. There's a real hazard there in Modi'in Elite where a few years ago a child was drowned. Basically, he was taken away by the river. Okay, so that's pretty bad. So you definitely don't want something like that. They have to look where they're putting it. Velo yifazarenu sham, and it should not be scattered there. Why shouldn't they do such a thing? Okay. In this case, lo yifazarenu. Okay, that means the Kohen doing it, he shouldn't scatter the ashes as he does it. Okay, meaning he shouldn't like dump it or throw it to the wind, right? Instead, it says Shenemar v'samo sheyani chenu benachad. He should put it down nicely. Okay, even when he's depositing, he knows the wind's not going to take it, but he shouldn't do it in a way that even just the force of how he's dumping it would cause it to be taken away by the wind. Vasser le'anopo, and it's forbidden, like you said, to derive benefit from this. From these ashes. It's not like a me'ila, technically speaking. There's no Isra me'ila, if I'm not mistaken. We'll read about that afterwards. What's me'ila? That's a person who did misuse temple property, and he actually has to pay a fine and bring a special korban. There are a lot of times you're not allowed to use property, but there's no din of me'ila to it. Sometimes there's me'ila d'Rabbanan, but in this case, he's not supposed to use it. What is the Ravad saying? The problem is the samo eitz al mizbeach. Here, the pasuk was talking about the actual truma sadeshin, the that which he took off the Mizbeach and put next to the ramp of the altar, he's supposed to put down on the Azara floor. But it doesn't say about the Shefech Hadeshin, when he actually takes the ashes out of the temple and puts it outside the city. It didn't say Besamo, but they learned it from there. The Ravid says, Ze lo namar ela al trumas hadeshin. He doesn't understand what the Rambam is talking about. The Rambam says, when we take the ashes out of the temple, large quantities of ash, they should be put down nicely at their deposit place. The source text, or the proof text that the Rambam's using is not referring to this particular case. Ve'ein me'ila ela b'trumas hadeshin. Okay? And by the way, the case of Me'ila, like I was just mentioning, the Ravid says that's only the Trumas Hadeshin, the part that's actually the formal first dose that's put on the floor of the temple courtyard. That has a din of Me'ila. But this doesn't have a din of Me'ila. So I guess the Korean editor said that the Ravid's basically telling us these hakpadas that exist, that the Rambam is mentioning with the actual rest of the Deshin, might not actually apply. Okay. It only all this extra ashes doesn't have the same hakpada. Okay. There's no me'ila. There's, maybe you don't have to, maybe you could. I would imagine you shouldn't, but maybe you could actually put it down in less than ceremonial manner. Okay, let's go into the next paragraph. First, give me a drink. Can't believe it. I've gone this entire 2 hours without taking a drink. Can you believe that? There's someone there who's saying something about it. Okay. Let's say a bracha. There's so many things that we are so unfamiliar with this. When we go to the synagogue in the morning, we just walk in and you don't need to clean up the synagogue first thing in the morning, right? But the temple, they had to basically clean up at the end of the day, and there was getting things in order at the beginning of the day. That's part of the service also. Synagogue service lacks that. The temple service is going to be so much radically different than synagogue service. They're different things entirely. Okay, so we have to get ready for a different reality. Mitzvah to say to do what? Laktir kak Torah al mizbach hazahav shebaychal pamayim b'chol yom. Positive command to the Torah to offer the incense twice a day on the golden altar in the temple. As we said, most illustrations of this golden altar don't show the altar to size. It was actually quite low. Maybe maximum as high as this temple, as this table. In usual illustrations, they show it that it's more convenient for the Kohen because the Kohen's a full-grown adult. It's basically chest level, nor like the beam over here for Torah reading. But that's not the case. The altar was actually quite low. Okay, so I would imagine most quantum had to stoop to do the service of the incense properly on the altar. No, the golden altar within the Kodesh. Okay, the incense altar was much smaller than the altar for the Korbanos. Okay, it's usually never drawn to scale in most illustrations. Never drawn to proper scale. Okay. Baboker uvein arbaim. In the morning and the afternoon. It says Aaron shall, smoke upon it the incense of spices. Lo iktiro baboker. If he did not burn the incense in the afternoon, yaktiro ben arbaim. You should still burn it in the afternoon. By the way, I said yaktiro. Lo hiktiro baboker. Is it hiktiro? He did not burn the incense, or lo hiktiru? I'm correcting myself now. I said lo hiktiro. He did not burn the incense, but the incense is feminine. If it was talking about Aaron or a particular Kohen not doing it, it would have said lo hiktira with a hey. So it's lo hiktiru, means the community didn't offer, the Kohanim didn't offer the incense. Yaktiru ben arbaim, they should still do in the afternoon. Afilu hayim azidim, even if for whatever reason they didn't do it in the morning because what? I don't know. They're all spiteful. Mazidim, they did on purpose for whatever reason. I don't know. It says like this is a crime against God, but they didn't offer the incense first thing in the morning. Not first thing in the morning. In the morning, it's still do the afternoon dose. Ideally, Rambam says a few times, how do you initiate the service of a lot of these kalim? You're supposed to use them at first time. If you make a new altar, so the first time you use it should be in the afternoon, not the morning service. If you have a new altar that's coming into use, it should be in the afternoon. Rambam has similar rules with regarding to the menorah and the shulchan and even the outer altar. the proper way to use it for the first time. We'll see down here that the Rambam says, okay, when the Rambam is saying this, what's the point of saying if you missed the first dose, then you should still do the afternoon dose? He means that you should do double in the afternoon, okay, like a shlumin, okay, which is twice as much. And according to Sefer Chinuch, they have to, sorry, hold on 1 second. Sorry, got that wrong. The Rambam says in the afternoon you don't make up what you did in the what you missed in the morning, but according to the Chinuch you do. Okay, they missed the morning Torahs, so that means according to the Chinuch they're going to double the Torahs in the afternoon. Yeah. The tefillah is saying else. The fact that we have to make up tefillahs, even though it's a general rule, you missed the korban's time, that's it. If you missed the korban Temidin in the morning, the lamb of the morning, you don't bring 2 lambs in the afternoon. No such thing. But the sages instituted for you. You have to daven in the morning. So if you miss davening in the morning, or you davened really wrong in the morning, you have to make it up in the afternoon. It has nothing to do with the way they did things in the temple. Okay, you missed your davening, so the sages said you have to daven again. Okay, let's see here. Want to see this other rule? Perhaps we should. I'll bring this up next week. We'll see when every particular vessel is supposed to be used for the first time. Is it liikuva? The way the Rambam has it here, and the way the history is described, it is they didn't actually. This isn't liikuva. That is, if the first opportunity to offer incense is in the morning, they don't say, "Well, it's a new altar, so we'll wait in the afternoon to initiate it." It's just better to do so. When would this come into play? When they are actually switching out the altars. They built a new one that's better. They're fixing it. They got a new menorah, whatever it is. Okay. If you were able to do this, but you have a chance to bring in the new one into service, so that you bring it to service at its appropriate time. But in Achidami, if the service needs to be done now, you don't say, well, this is a brand new one. Can't use it yet. Okay, that's not how it works. Let's see. So how much incense every single day? Mishkal mea dinarim. The weight of 100 dinars. Wow, how much is that basically? It says in the Mishnah, maneh b'chol yom. A maneh is 100 dinars. Dinars is a measure of silver. It's about 480 grams of silver. So 480 grams of incense every single day. How much is that? It's almost half a kilo. Divided by 2 means 240 grams in the morning, 240 grams in the afternoon. How much incense is this? The coin holds it in his hands, basically, and shovel and all that, right? He pours it with his hands. Chamishim baboker, chamishim bein arbaim. So 240 grams or 50 dinars worth of in weight of incense in the morning, 50 in the afternoon. What? Yeah, you cup your hands. Yeah. So here's the calculation over here. 6,000 dinar equals a talent, by the way. A kikar, that's a talent, which is about how much of silver is that? 27 kilograms. When they say a talent of silver, kikar kesef, 27 kilos of silver. The bars of gold they have in Fort Knox, how much are those? Okay. Well, I don't know. So the dinar is equal to 27 kilograms divided by 600, which gives us 4.5 grams per dinar. Okay. So 100 dinars should be 450 grams, not 40. There's one way of calculating. There's machlokas, obviously, in these things because, things change. So the Temple Institute even says that this isn't 480 grams. This is actually 425 grams. The way they calculated the dinar is the maneh of each day is 425 grams. And the Makbili gives an even closer estimate. He says it actually comes out to 423 grams. He's the most makel, as it says in your edition. So the ratio of 423 to 480, the most machmir is 480 grams. The most makel is 423. That's approximately the ratio of 108 to 125. Why is that important? The ratio of 108, 423 divided by 480 is approximately 108 to 125. Why? Because just a few minutes ago I said the letech. The Machmir opinion says the letech is 125 liters. And Makbili says the letech is just 108 liters. So you see that even though in one case we're talking about mass, the weight of something, and there we're talking about volume. You still see the way they calculate is all based on certain measurements. And you see that Makbili, Kedark Bakodesh, is always significantly less at a certain ratio than, let's say, the Machmir opinions that we have in these editions of the Rambam. I wonder, what's the ratio of 74, 75 to 86? Is that the same ratio? Someone do a quick calculation, because that's, they say, Revius. Generally speaking, Revius is like 86.4 liters, just like that. Kos, right? CC, 86 cc. But the more Makel opinions say somewhere between 74 and 76 cc, like Makbili and Rabbi Rabinovich came to that calculation. Okay. It's all based on similar principles over here. Next. Oh, sorry, we're getting a thing. I saw Makbili made which comment? I don't have Makbili in front of me. What's the comment? I don't know, maybe you can ask me. Or maybe he's asking that a different topic altogether. Sorry, I'm getting bombarded here. Off topic. Is this someone listening to the shir, or someone just asking a different? Oh, no, this is a comment on a different Makbili. Okay. Very interesting. Back to this. Let's finish this halacha, and then we could wish a good Shabbos. Okay. We said in Hilchos Beis Bechira that the golden altar, unlike the way it was in the Mishkan, was actually made not a kli, and was actually set into the ground or the floor of the temple in the first temple. That's the way it stayed in the second temple. Okay, the Mizbeach stopped being a kli. The second something is attached to the ground, that's now considered karka. What's the advantage of being attached to the ground? By the way, if you're made out of metal and you're a holy vessel, if you're attached to the ground, you can't actually contract impurity. Okay? The Mizbeach is attached to the ground. It cannot be impurified. It can't be contaminated ritually, like, let's say, a menorah or a shulchan, which is a good thing, right? But why is it they had to dismantle the temple, the temple's altar in Maccabean times? Oh, it was contaminated? No, it was contaminated by Avodah Zarah. It had been used for Avodah Zarah. It was inappropriate to use for God, but it didn't have any ritual contamination the way we normally think of it. Okay, so it says if the Mizbeach is not there, Maktirin Ketoret Bimkomo. So we should actually burn the Ketores right there in its place. It's not there. So the floor is a legitimate place to burn the Ketores. Yeah, you burn the Ketores there. Okay. Uktores Shepaka Ameal Gebeam Mizbeach. And also a coal that, I don't know, popped. It's hot. Sometimes hot things pop. They jump a little bit. So it fell off of the Mizbeach. Afilu kratin shaba in machzirinota. Okay, even if you have like chunks of it, okay, it's not burnt. You can actually, it's a type you can actually pick up with tongs and put back. You don't put it back onto the altar. Okay, this is in contrast to the din of the outer altar. The outer altar in Psulei Mikdashim, we're going to see if it's not there, or even as a slight pigam, you cannot use it. The outer altar has to be in its place and complete in order to be valid for sacrifice. So you can't offer sacrifice at the place of where the Mizbeach is supposed to be in today's temple. Even though the Rambam says no temple, you can still offer sacrifice, and we still are obligated to do so. We can only offer Korban Tamid tomorrow morning if we're to put the altar there. Build a new altar and actually put it there. I can't say, well, this is where the altar is supposed to be, so we'll do the service here. We'll burn the lamb right where the altar is supposed to be. For Ketores, you could do that, but for the Korbanos, you can't actually do that. Okay, so stop it here. What's the question? Well, so Korban Pesach, you have to build an altar right away. There are people who are ready to do such a thing. They have makeshift altars or a way to build an altar. No, you could slaughter it anywhere within the halachically defined azara, where the azara used to be, but the blood has to be placed on the altar. And the entrails have to be burned on the altar. Okay, any questions, comments, complaints? No? Okay. So we'll see you guys all next week. Close with the prayer that we live to see the destruction of Israel's enemies and the reconquest of all of Eretz Yisrael and the rebuilding of the temple, speedily in our days. Or at least this God help us repent. That's the ikr. We should all repent, and then it'll be a piece of cake after that. Shabbat shalom. Happy New Year. See you next year.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.